One day, they're in your life, fully present, smiling, texting, telling you how different you are, how lucky they feel to have found you. And the next, gone. No fight, no warning, no explanation, just silence, and the unbearable sound of your own mind trying to fill in the blanks. This is ghosting, and it doesn't just hurt, it erodes. It leaves you questioning everything. Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Did I imagine the connection? You scroll back through old messages, looking for clues. You replay conversations in your head, trying to find the exact moment it all shifted. But there's nothing. No closure, no clarity. Just a hole, shaped like a person who used to be there. Carl Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And that's what makes ghosting feel so brutal. It's not just that they're gone. It's that you're still full of what you never got to say. You weren't just left. You were left open. And that's what hurts the most. The echo of everything unspoken. See, ghosting isn't just about disconnection. It's about avoidance. Avoiding discomfort. Avoiding confrontation. Avoiding responsibility. They didn't leave because you were too intense. They left because they couldn't handle intensity. Not yours, theirs. Because ghosting isn't an act of cruelty. It's an act of emotional cowardice. And yet, you wait, even when you know they're not coming back, even when they watch your stories but never text, even when every part of you screams, "Move on." You wait, not for them, but for the version of you that felt seen, wanted, enough, even if it was temporary. But here's what they didn't tell you. The longer you wait for answers from someone who gave you none, the longer you delay the conversation that really matters, the one with yourself. Why they disappear, and why you still wait. They didn't leave because you were too much. They left because you held up a mirror they weren't ready to face. Ghosting isn't random. It's a coping mechanism, a way to avoid accountability, and more than that, a way to avoid themselves. When someone ghosts you, they're not just running from a conversation, they're running from the version of themselves they don't know how to explain. See, staying, even when it's hard, requires emotional maturity. It requires sitting in discomfort. It requires vulnerability. Ghosting, on the other hand, requires nothing but silence, and silence is safe for them. Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But most people don't want understanding. They want escape. So instead of saying, 'I'm afraid I can't give you what you need,' they disappear. Instead of owning their avoidance, they hide behind ambiguity. Instead of being honest, they let you create your own narrative, because that way, they don't have to say the hard truth. I used you to feel something until I didn't want to feel anything anymore." Brutal, yes, but clarity often is. And now, let's talk about you, the one still waiting, still checking your phone, still hoping their silence means something other than what it means. You're not stupid, you're not naive, you're not weak, you're just unfinished. That's what ghosting does. It leaves you hanging in an emotional limbo, waiting for someone else to close a door that they already walked through. You keep waiting because it didn't end with a crash. It ended with a fade. And the human mind is terrible at processing silence. So you go back, you reread, you analyze, you fantasize about a message that says, "Sorry, I was scared. Let's talk." But here's what you need to hear. You don't need a message. You need a decision. Because ghosting doesn't become trauma because they left. It becomes trauma because you stay stuck in the waiting. And the longer you wait, the deeper the wound becomes. Not because they're worth it, but because you've tied your worth to their return. But the truth is this: closure is not something they give you. It's something you give yourself when you decide that silence is an answer. The addiction to silence, when your brain can't let go. It's not just emotional, it's biological. When someone ghosts you, your brain doesn't just feel sad, it enters a panic loop. Because humans are wired for connection. And when that connection is suddenly severed without explanation, your nervous system reads it as danger. Not disappointment, not they lost interest, but actual abandonment, survival threat. Carl Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." And that's exactly what happens. You resist the silence, so it grows. You try to let it go, but your brain keeps replaying it. Why? Because your brain is trying to solve a puzzle, but it doesn't have enough pieces. You don't just miss them. You miss closure. You miss the sense of control. And when that's taken away, your system goes into overdrive. It floods you with cortisol. It puts you on high alert. It creates what psychologists call an incomplete narrative. And your brain hates unfinished stories. That's why ghosting can feel more haunting than a toxic relationship with full-on drama. Because at least with drama, there's something to hold on to, something to process. But with ghosting, there's nothing, just space, and your mind trying to fill it. That's when the obsession kicks in. You scroll, you watch their stories, you wonder if that playlist they posted was about you. You look for meaning in everything, not because you want to go back, but because your brain is trying to find resolution. And the silence only feeds the cycle. The more unanswered the situation feels, the more your mind tells you, there must be more here. But here's the brutal truth. There isn't. What feels like a mystery is actually avoidance dressed as depth. They didn't disappear because something profound happened. They disappeared because facing you, really facing you, meant facing themselves. And so now you're left with the fragments, the what-ifs, the hope that maybe it'll make sense if you just wait long enough. But it won't. Because closure doesn't come from them finally talking. It comes from you deciding that their silence is the loudest answer they'll ever give you. And the second you believe that, your healing begins. You're not waiting for them. You're waiting to feel whole again. It's easy to think you're waiting for them, for a text, for a voice note, for some kind of sign that says, it wasn't all in your head. But let's be honest, you're not really waiting for them. You're waiting for the version of you that felt alive when they were around. Because when they disappeared, they didn't just leave a silence, they took something with them. The way you smiled at your phone, the way you believed you were wanted, the brief moment when you felt like you mattered, and now you're not grieving them. You're grieving the version of you that existed while they were still around. That's why it hurts so much, not because they were special, but because you were, when they reflected you back to yourself. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But ghosting interrupts that process. It leaves you in a story that feels unfinished, so you start to question your worth inside it. You ask, was I too much? Did I move too fast? Was I not enough? But those are the wrong questions, because ghosting doesn't tell you who you are. It tells you who they weren't ready to be. They weren't ready to be honest. They weren't ready to hold space. They weren't ready for connection that didn't come with escape routes. And that's not on you. You didn't scare them. Their own reflection did. The emotional intimacy you offered, the transparency, the softness, the truth, that wasn't a mistake. That was you. And if that made them run, they were never a safe place to begin with. But the mind doesn't accept that easily. It keeps digging for meaning. It wants to rewrite the past. So you play scenes over and over. You start to question your instincts. You start to wonder if maybe it really was your fault. But here's the shift. You don't need them to come back to validate the connection. You don't need a response to prove your worth. You don't need to figure it out to finally move forward. You need to remember who you were before the silence taught you to doubt yourself. The truth is, ghosting doesn't break you, but waiting does. Waiting keeps you paused in a story that already ended, and the longer you stay there, the more disconnected you become from the person who deserves to move on, which is you. Taking your power back without needing revenge. They don't owe you closure. They don't owe you a text. They don't owe you an explanation. But you owe yourself something. The chance to stop handing your peace to people who never asked what it cost you. The thing about ghosting is, it tricks you into thinking the ending is still open, that the silence means something's unfinished. But here's the truth. The story ended the moment they left without a word. Everything after that, that's you, keeping the door open in your mind. But healing doesn't wait for them to return. Healing starts when you stop waiting. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And maybe that's why their leaving hurt so much. Because while they ran from your truth, you were still afraid to stand in it alone. But you're here now, reading these words, feeling everything you tried not to feel. And that means you're not alone anymore. You're showing up for yourself. So how do you take your power back? Not by pretending it didn't hurt. Not by numbing out and calling it healing. Not by posting quotes about self-worth while secretly hoping they still check your stories. Number. You take it back by doing the hard, boring, quiet work. Blocking them, not to punish them, but to protect your nervous system. Stopping the mental replays and choosing presence over fantasy, writing the message you never sent and deleting it, saying I deserve more, and believing it even when it aches. You won't heal overnight. You won't wake up one day and never miss them again. But you will wake up one day and realize their silence doesn't own you anymore. You'll feel sadness, but not self-doubt. You'll remember what happened, but won't make it your identity. You'll still care, but from afar. That's not indifference. That's growth. When you no longer need revenge, proof, or closure, that's the moment you win. Not because they came back, but because you did. Closure doesn't come from them, it comes from you. You waited for the message. You waited for the apology. You waited for something, anything, that would make the silence make sense. But it never came. Because ghosting was never about logic. It was about avoidance. It was about someone who didn't have the strength to finish what they started, leaving you to carry the weight of a decision they couldn't face. And still, you carried it. You turned it into self-blame, into questions that looped in your mind. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Why do people always leave? But those questions don't belong to you. They belong to the part of you still looking for permission to let go. Carl Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." So let's stop looking outward. Let's stop hoping someone who vanished will come back and validate your worth. Because you don't need their closure, you need your own. Closure isn't a message, it's a choice. It's standing at the door they left open and deciding to close it, not because they finally explained, but because you're done explaining yourself. You're done begging silence to speak. You're done trying to decode breadcrumbs. You're done letting someone's emotional immaturity dictate your value. This is what closure really is. It's deleting the thread, not because you're over it, but because you're ready to start healing. It's breathing through the ache, not numbing it. It's remembering that you didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of what they never were. You didn't get left behind. You outgrew a place where communication was a threat, where honesty was too heavy, where your softness became a mirror they couldn't bear to look into. And now you get to take all that empathy, all that love, all that care, and give it back to the one person who never should have had to wait for it. You. So no more checking your phone. No more, maybe they'll come around. No more tying your healing to someone else's capacity to do the right thing. You are not the problem. You are the lesson, and whether they ever realize it or not, you don't need them to. Because the moment you stop chasing closure, you become it. And that version of you, the one who doesn't wait anymore, the one who walks away with dignity, not bitterness, that version of you is already waking up. So say goodbye, not to them, to the story that says you're only lovable when someone else says so. You've always been whole. You just forgot for a minute. Welcome back.